Muy buenos días. El Ministerio de Telecomunicaciones y Sociedad de la Información da bienvenida al webinar Elaboración de Papers en el Ecuador. El día de hoy tendremos la participación de una importante doctora que viene desde el extranjero a darnos aspectos de informarnos sobre la metodología, sobre la forma de elaborar papers y también sobre la importancia y cómo podemos hacerlo aquí en el Ecuador. Para ello hago la presentación de la doctora Oviar. Por favor, doctora.
Buenos días. Good morning. Nice to be here. This is my first time to Ecuador, but I like this city, I like this country, and I thank to benefit because they give me the chance to visit Ecuador and Quito. And I'm very glad that I can share with you how to write a scientific paper. One of my activity here in Ecuador from Senegal. I should transfer the knowledge about how to write a scientific paper, and the next will be how to write a proposal research. Okay, now let's start talk about scientific writing. So before I start the presentation, you can reach me in this email. You can discuss and talk with me. You can reach me in Gmail, sringoringonio@gmail.com, and also in hotmail@staff.gunadharma.ac.id. You can find this email on the material later. I like to show you few quotes. It's very interesting in scientific and also in research. Sir Francis Darwin and Sir William Osler, long back ago, they say in science, the credit goes to the man who convinces the world, not to the man to whom the idea first occurs. So it means, it shows that you need to write. You need to write what you have found, what is your result. You need to write so that everybody in the world, they know that you find something. And also from Annie McCree, this is about writing. Tell the readers a story, because without a story, you are merely using words to prove you can string them together in logical sentences. And another quote from professor from University of Oslo: the essential key for writing is to write regularly. Like it or not, great ideas come often by writing. Releasing the subconscious, waiting for inspiration and ideas will not work. But it does help to have a notebook with you all the time for sudden brainstorms or inspiration. So now let's move to scientific paper. What is scientific paper? A scientific paper is written and published report describing original research results. So a scientific paper must be the first publication of original research results. In the forward by piece of the author can repeat the experiments and test the conclusions, and in a journal or other source, the document will be available within the scientific community. Don't think that you can be writers. Writing can be learned. How to learn to be a writer? Read, pay attention, and learn other person's writing. So don't hesitate to imitate other writings. Stop waiting for inspiration. Talk about your research before trying to write about it. develop a thesaurus habit, search for the right word rather than settling for any old word. Avoid using word forms. Use words in the form that conveys your meaning as clearly and simply as possible. Do not use more words where fewer will do. Respect your audience. Try not to bore them. It means you should know your audience and write for the specific audience. Use outline to organize your ideas and writing. To make an outline of the major headings. List the key ideas to be covered under each heading. Think about the structure of the paragraph. Do not turn in the first draft. Nobody gets it perfect on the first try. So if you find that your write is not good, do revise. Learn how to cut ruthlessly. Never become too attached to your words. Show readers, don't tell readers. It means instead to say good or optimal, write the exact statistics. So it will show the readers and don't tell. Make your writing flow and resonate. Accept that writing is hard to everyone. So before starting to write the paper, you should pay attention to few things. And before, let's see the quote from Professor Kerry Emmanuel from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Perhaps you may follow how he tried to write the paper. Before writing a major paper, I make it a point to read papers or books of authors whose writing style I have a high regard for. This can be anything: classical fiction, scientific papers written during the Victorian period, etc. I find that this can be favorably influence my own writing and erase the unfortunate memory of the numerous dry, badly writing papers one inevitably has to read as background to the research one is presenting. So this is a good idea. So before you start to write your paper, do these things. Record readings or results, make tables, draw graphs, keep file to record summarize of results and any observation, however insignificant. Delete the files, so you will not lose any files in the future. Revise your readings. You may need to repeat an experiment while you still have the materials. Write ideas whenever they come to you. Don't wait, because you might forget the ideas come to you. Talking about scientific paper, you may find different structure from one publisher to one publisher. But generally, you'll find these parts of the scientific paper. First, title, and then abstract, introduction, methods, results, or in some publisher, you will find result and discussion joined in one chapter. But in another publisher, you will find result and discussion is separately described. And then conclusion. In some publisher, you may find that they ask for conclusion and suggestion in one chapter. And the last one is references. Now let's discuss the title. The title is extremely important and must be chosen with great care, as it will be appeal first to the readers. So be careful to define the title of your paper. Sometimes people will read your whole paper if they're interested in the title. A good title is defined as the fewest possible words that adequately describe the contents of the paper. So the title should neither be too short, not too long as to be meaningless. Waste words such as studies on, using, investigation on, A, and D, etc. should not be used on the title. The title should capture the fundamental nature of the experiment and findings. And be careful with syntax. Syntax on the title must be very careful considered. Pay attention to word order. How to prepare a title? You may follow this suggestion. It will be guidance you how to make a good title. Make a list of the most important keywords. Think of a title that contains these words. The title could state the conclusion of the paper, but the title never contains abbreviations, chemical formulas, proprietary names, or jargon. Be very careful of the grammatical errors due to faulty word order. Indexing and abstracting of the paper depends on the accuracy of the title. So the title should contain the keywords that reflect the contents of the paper. Here's some suggestion how can you make a title. There are 4 types of title that can be used for scientific papers. First, indicative titles. This type of title indicates the subject matter of a paper, but give no indication of any results obtained or conclusion drawn. For example, the influence of word of mouth on brand equity for automotive products in Indonesia. So this title only provides the subject matter of the paper. It's about word of mouth and brand equity. The second type, informative titles. This kind of titles give an indication of results achieved and conclusion drawn, as well as the subject matter of the paper. For example, word of mouth affect brand equity for automotive products in Indonesia. So, in this title, the conclusion of the research has been provided that word of mouth affect brand equity. And the third type, question type titles. This type of title obviously asks a question. For example, how word of mouth influence brand equity for automotive products in Indonesia. And the last type is main subtitle or series type. This approach is not liked by editors of scientific journals because if they accept the first paper, they will be duty bound to accept sequels. For instance, brand equity of automotive products in Indonesia. In the first series of the paper, the influence of word of mouth. Perhaps following papers will come with other variables such as country of origin, etc. Now let's move to the abstract. An abstract is a summary of the information in a document right after the completion of the paper. The abstract is not written before paper is completed. It is of fundamental importance of the abstract be written clearly and simply, as it is the first and sometimes the only part of the manuscript. It should be written in one paragraph. It should be written in the past tense, and as it refers to work done, long words should be followed by its abbreviation, which will be used throughout the abstract and paper. Abstracts should provide a brief summary of each of the main sections of the paper. So, in your abstract, you should state the principal objective and scope of the investigation, describe the method used, but in summary, summarize the results, and state the principal conclusion. The next part of the scientific paper is the introduction. What should you write on the introduction? The introduction should answer why is the study of scientific interest and what is the objective. To answer why the current study is of scientific interest, discuss the results and conclusions of previously published studies. Cite peer-reviewed scientific literature or scholarly reviews. Avoid general reference to works such as textbooks. So always cite reference from journal and try to find a peer journal. The introduction is organized to move from general information to specific information. The background must be summarized succinctly, but it should not be itemized. Limit the introduction to studies that relate directly to the present study. Emphasize your specific contribution to the topic. The last sentences of the introduction should be a statement of objectives and a statement of hypothesis. This should be a good transition to the next section, methods, in which you will explain how we proceeded to meet your objectives and test your hypothesis. In the introduction, use the present tense when referring to work that has already been published, but past tense when referring to your own study. Use the active voice as much as possible. Avoid lengthy or unfocused reviews of previous work research. Define any specialized terms or abbreviations. And the good introduction is 3 to 4 paragraphs. So keep focus and write brief 3 to 4 paragraphs on your introduction. Now the methods. This part of the manuscript provides all the methodological details necessary for another scientist to duplicate the work. Pay attention to this following suggestion. If the method is new, all details must be provided. But if the method has been previously published in a scientific journal, only the reference should be given with some identification. For example, the multidimensional integral is approximated using an adaptive quadrature methods. So this is previously published in scientific journal, and the writer will use this method. So we don't need to describe in detail adaptive quadratic method, but instead we need to cite Rabbi-Hesketh et al. 2005. Questions such as how or how much must be answered accurately. Give statistic detail. Methods used for statistical analysis must be mentioned. ordinary ones without comments, so you don't need to explain. If you use, for instance, correlation or regression, you don't need to explain it more detail. You only need to spoke or to write that regression or correlation was the point of the research. But advanced or unusual ones require interactive citation. It should be a narrative of the steps you took in your experiment or study, not a list of instructions such as you might find in a cookbook. An important part of writing a scientific paper is deciding what bits of information needs to be given in detail. And in the methods, use past tense. Now let's move to the result. This section summarizes and illustrates the findings in orderly and logical sequence, but does not attempt to interpret their meaning. In this part, use past tense. The result is the core of or heart of the paper. It needs to be clearly and simply stated, since it constitutes the new knowledge contributed to the whole. The text should guide the reader to the findings, stressing the major points. Do not describe methods that have already been described in previous section or that have been inadvertently omitted. Do not present the raw data that collected, but rather summarize the data with text, tables, and or figures. Tables is appropriate for large or complicated data sets that will be difficult to explain clearly in text. Figures is appropriate for data sets that exhibit trends, patterns, or relationships that are best conveyed visually. But remember, you only need to choose one, either text, tables, or figures. The discussion. This section is the hardest section to write in the scientific paper. Its primary purpose is to show the relationships among observed facts. Use present tense except when describing previous work or past. You should interpret your results in light of other published results by adding additional information from source you cited in the introduction section, as well as by introducing new sources. Show how your results and interpretation agree or contrast with previously published work. Point out any exception or any lack of correlation and define unsettled points. Relate your discussion back to the objectives and questions you raised in the introduction section. However, do not simply state the objectives. Make statements that synthesize all the evidence, including previous work and the current work. Discuss the theoretical implication of your work and any possible practical applications. Limit your conclusion to those that your data can actually support. You can then proceed to speculate on why this occurred and whether you expected this to occur based on other research findings. Suggest future direction for research, new methods, explanation of the deviation from previously published results, etc. Now we move to conclusion and suggestion section. There are two standard ways to conclude. First, you may restate answer and or you indicate the importance of work by stating implications, applications, speculation, or possibly suggest future work. For conclusion and suggestion, use present tense. The last section of scientific paper is the reference. Referencing is a standardized way to acknowledging the sources of information and ideas that used in your document. References is a list of all the references used in the text must be written. Any papers not cited in the text should not be included. Reference lists allow readers to investigate the subject in greater depth. A reference list contains only the books, articles, and web pages, etc. that are cited in the text of the document. A bibliography includes all sources consulted for background or further reading. There are some formats for references. You may find it varies widely, and most widely used first is hardback format. For hardback format, you may download from this link. How to cite reference using hardback format. First, let's talk about in-text references. In-text references, we should write author's last name, year of publication, and page number. For example, if you cite Austin, so we should write Austin 1813, page 64. And you are also permitted to include the author's name in a sentence, omitting it from the brackets. So if you put the name of the author, last name of the author outside of the bracket. So this is the example. The person, and then in the bracket will be year 1830, and then the page of the article. Reference list. Reference lists should be in alphabetical order. If you follow a hardback format, so you should put in alphabetical order. We differentiate it to write reference from books, article from journal, website, and etc. So for books, write author's last name, abbreviation first and middle name, year of publication, book title, publisher, and city. There is some example. For one author, Conferencia is last name followed by first name in abbreviation A, and then the year 2007, and then the title of the book, Understanding Urban Policy, a Critical Approach, and then publisher, the publisher is Backward Publishing, and then the city. For more than one authors, first write the last name of the first author, followed by abbreviation of the first and middle name, then second author with the same, third author, etc. So this is the example. This consists of 4 authors. Series, the last name of the first author, then first name in abbreviation R, and then the second author's last name is Van Putte, and the abbreviation for the first name is C, the third author's Tegar, and the last author's Castle. And then year of the publication 2011, and the title of the book series Anatomy and Psychology, and the publishing is McGraw-Hill, the city is New York. For ebook, is now you can find easily ebook, and sometimes for free. So some researchers use ebook as a reference. For ebook, first write author last name, then abbreviation of first and middle name, followed by year of the publication, book title, publisher, city, and date of view and site address. So this is the example. Niman S, Vincent D, and David D. There are two authors. The year of their publication 2004, and then followed by the title of the book, Helping Children Who Are Deaf, Family and Community Support for Children Who Do Not Hear Well, and this is the title of the book. And the publisher is Experian Foundation, city is Berkeley, and this book was filmed on 11 June 2007 from the site www.experian.org, etc. And for chapter in edited book, you should write first author last name, abbreviation of first and middle name, year of publication, chapter title, editors, book title, publisher, and city. You can see the example. Richard AC, 1997, Peace on Globalization, the title of the chapter. In H.L. Vivaldi is the editor, and the book title is Australia in Global War, and the publisher is Century, and the city is Northside in Australia. And for journal article, you should write author last name, abbreviation of first and middle name, then year of publication, article title, journal name, volume, and page. Pay attention to the italic and also the types, the style to write all parts of the references. This is the example. Tamer T and Blocks T, year of publication 2002, and the title of the paper on quality in art and art therapy. The name of the journal, American Journal of Art Therapy, volume 40 and page 2018 up to 2031. Another reference format very common is American Psychology Association. The abbreviation is APA format. In text reference, you should write author's last name, year of publication, and page numbers. So write similar with Harvard format. For example, Austin, 1813, page 64. Page numbers are only required when directly quoting from a text. However, it is best practice to use page numbers when referring to an idea or specific section of a larger work. For example, a formula in an article or a paragraph or chapter in a book. When referring to an entire work that covers a single topic, For example, a journal article, a page number is not required. For upper format, reference list in general, references should be listed alphabetically by the last name of the first author of each work. These are special reference list cases in APA format. In the case of works by different authors with the same family name, list references alphabetically by the author's initials. In the case of multiple works by the same author in different years, list references chronologically earliest to the latest. In the case of multiple works by the same author in the same year, list references alphabetically by title in the reference list. When referring to books, book chapters, article titles, or web pages, capitalize only the first letter of the first word of the title and subtitle and proper nouns. For referring to journal titles, capitalize all major words. Do not capitalize words such as or, and, etc. And for books, first write author last name, abbreviation first and middle name, and in bracket year of publication, book title, publisher, and city. For example, Kohan A 2007 in bracket, then the title of the book, Understanding Urban Policy, a critical approach, and then the publisher, Blackwell Publishing, and the city. If more than authors, we should write first last name of the first author, and then abbreviation of the first and middle name, followed by second, third, and etc. So this is the example. Chili R, Pantuto C, Regan J, and Basso A, and the year of the publication bracket 2011. And then the title of the book, Series Anatomy and Psychology, and the publisher, McGraw-Hill, and city, New York. For ebook, we should write author last name, abbreviation of first and middle name, year of publication, book title, publisher, city, date of date, and site address. And for chapter in edited book, to write author's last name first, and then abbreviation of first and middle name, year of publication, chapter title, and then type in editor, book title, city, and publisher. In journal article, we should write down author's last name, abbreviation of first and middle name, year of publication the bracket, then article title, journal name, volume, and issue in the bracket, and then page. The third common reference format used is IEEE. You can find this format in IEEE sites. Index references use numbering orderly. So use in bracket 1, 2, etc. instead of name of the author. But in reference list, you should write down all the names, also the title, but here is quite different. In IEEE, first write the abbreviation of first, middle name, then followed by last name. For example, 1, B is a first name in abbreviation, and then Klaus is the last name of the first author, so B Klaus, and P Hong, and the title is Robert Vision, and publisher is Cambridge, and the city is Cambridge, and the publisher is MIT. And the year, right at the end of the reference. So this is some examples for 1, 2, 3, and also for books and for edited books. This is, for example, for article in journal. We may related to this material. So that's all the parts of scientific papers. Now I'm gonna give some practical tips how to write a good paper. Because good paper you may submit to publisher, good publisher, high-rated publishers such as Elsevier, Emerald, Science, etc. But if you can write a good paper, it is impossible to submit to a good publisher. So first, always do proofreads. Read repeatedly your writing and may revise if needed. And it will be good also if you want some expert to read first your paper before submitting to publisher. And then pay attention to words. Reduce dead weight words and phrases. Be efficient and be specific. Do not use slang. Here are some words you should pay attention. Look at the following pairs of words. Those words are often used in scientific texts. Learn how to use them correctly. Fewer versus less. You should be careful when to use fewer and when to use less. And then infer versus imply. As versus because. Disinterested versus uninterested. Alibi versus excuse. Data versus datum. Be careful, data is plural in nature, but sometimes you need to use datum. Later versus later. Causal versus casual. It's quite different, but sometimes you may make mistake by use non-appropriate words. Loose versus loose. Mute versus smooth. Discrete versus discrete, but similar. And look to this words: very, really, quite, basically, and generally. All these words seldom add anything useful. So try to avoid these words in your writing. Often words there is extra weight. So be careful, don't use too much there. About syntaxes, some practical tips when you write sentence. Always follow subject, verb, and object formats. So you should give these three subject, format, subject, verb, and object. Always keep subject and verb close together. Use short verbs and avoid turning verbs into nouns. Each sentence should make a single point. Keep sentence short, don't use long sentence. Use the meaning of the words. So keep sentence short, use 20 to 22 words in every sentence. Eliminate negatives. Use positive construction instead. Use the active voice rather than the passive voice. And here I provide some important to notice. You can also download from this site. This is very good to remember and to give attention by memorize all this work or always refer to this website. Your paper will be in good quality. Here there are some dead pages. Always avoid to use dead weight phrases. So if you read a paper using in the internet, in the nature of, for instance, don't think that it is a good paper. So many dead weight phrases here. We can refer to this material later. And also about clunky phrase. So instead to use clunky phrase, use equivalent, such as the majority of. Instead of using a majority of, use most. Instead of use of number of, use many. So you can refer to this material later. We can, when you start your writing or you have finished your writing, revise again, read again your writing, and try to find this clunky phrase, dead words, and everything here. And also wording. So instead to use or to write 3 a.m. in the morning, because a.m. is represented morning, so write 3 a.m. Absolutely spectacular is redundant, so it is good to use only spectacular. Also in here you can find some words. Okay, so this is all the presentation how to write scientific paper. So you have some questions we can discuss. You can send the email to my email address. And before I stop the presentation, I like to quote some quotes from Einstein and also Russell. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. Science may set limits to knowledge, but should not set limits to imagination. So that's all. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, esta ha sido la participación de la doctora, quien nos ha dado información muy valiosa sobre cómo es de realizar la elaboración de los papers. Esperamos que todas las personas participen. Y si es que necesitan más información o necesitan volver a revisar el video que se ha transmitido por YouTube online, están invitados a entrar a la página web del Ministerio de Telecomunicaciones en el Observatorio TIC, observatoriotic.gov.es. Y nada más por el momento, desde el Ministerio de Telecomunicaciones y Sociedad de Información, agradecemos mucho por su participación y esperamos verlo en otra ocasión.